A rhinoceros, the Vatican, and the Mediterranean Sea. What kind of connection could there possibly be between them? Well, recently uncovered in secret Vatican documents, this case will reveal the darkest side of gift exchanges between kings. Guarantee you what happened in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea forever changed the course of history and the Vatican. From here on out, I'll tell you how this rhinoceros, the Vatican, and the Mediterranean Sea are all connected, and the truth behind the most controversial gift of the 16th century. In the 16th century, politics had a wild side. Literally, picture this. Royal messengers crossing entire continents, carrying not just gold and jewels, but live animals as symbols of power. It was like a who gives the most exotic gift wins game, a dangerous status competition among the elite. And we're not talking about Persian kittens or colorful parrots. No, the gifts were way more impressive. Lions roaring from golden cages, elephants decked out with precious gems, and even creatures people thought were just legends. It was in this wild scene that our 4-ton protagonist made his debut. The Sultan of Cambay, looking to impress, or maybe get rid of a problem, decided to gift the Portuguese viceroy of Goa, Afonso de Albuquerque, with something no one could have seen coming: a giant rhinoceros. But what am I supposed to do with this? That was probably Albuquerque's first reaction when he saw that gray mountain of muscle and hide arriving at the port. The poor viceroy probably broke into a cold sweat. After all, how do you take care of an animal that looked like it stepped right out of a fairy tale? To make matters worse, the rhinoceros wasn't exactly what you'd call an ideal pet. Imagine it, a beast the size of a small house with a temperament, let's say, unpredictable, and an appetite that could wipe out an entire field of greenery. That's when Albuquerque had a brilliant, or maybe desperate, idea. I know, I'll send it to the king. After all, what gift could be more majestic for His Majesty than a creature most Europeans only knew from fantastical stories? And so our rhinoceros set off on his first sea voyage, completely unaware that this was just the start of an extraordinary and tragic journey across the seas of Europe. The port of Lisbon had never seen anything like it that morning in May 1515. The crowd crammed onto the docks, necks craning, eyes wide, everyone eager to catch a glimpse of the extraordinary creature that had just arrived. "Dear God, so it's true. They really exist," whispered the nobles, as the rhinoceros clumsily made his way down the ship's ramp, chains clinking with every step. King Manuel I, famous for his extravagant collection of exotic animals, was beside himself with excitement. Sure, he already had his famous albino elephant, which was the talk of the court, but a rhinoceros, that was something entirely new. "Your Majesty," one of the advisors nervously warned, "perhaps we should consider where we're going to, house our new guest." And that's when the problems began. The rhinoceros, clearly stressed from the long sea journey, had zero interest in becoming a court attraction. His temper was explosive, his strength unmatched, and his appetite, well, let's just say the royal gardens were never the same. "For heaven's sake," exclaimed the royal stable master, "he eats more than 10 horses combined. And yesterday, he nearly knocked down a wall just because he didn't like the hay." King Manuel. I started to realize that his new pet was becoming a bigger problem than he'd anticipated. The expenses were astronomical. The servants were terrified, and there was always that looming risk that the animal might decide to take an unauthorized stroll through the palace corridors. That's when news reached the king's ears. Pope Leo X was a fan of exotic animals. Eureka! Manuel must have thought, seeing the perfect opportunity to turn his problem into a brilliant political move. "Prepare the ship," ordered the king. "We'll send our, special gift to His Holiness." But why would the Vatican be so interested in a rhinoceros? Officially, it was just another exotic gift for Pope Leo X's collection of wonders. But official stories don't always tell the whole truth, do they? You see, the 16th century was a time when the world was expanding at an unprecedented pace. New continents were being discovered, fantastic creatures were brought back to Europe, and the Vatican, the spiritual powerhouse of the time, needed to maintain its image as the supreme authority over everything known. and everything's still waiting to be uncovered. And here's where things get off the record. There are records, hidden in rare letters and manuscripts, suggesting the Vatican saw the rhinoceros not just as an exotic animal, but as a powerful religious symbol. That's right. For some theologians and scholars of the time, the rhinoceros was more than just a beast. It represented the battle between good and evil, a creature that challenged both logic and nature. Think about it. An animal with a natural, nearly impenetrable armor and a single threatening horn in the middle of its forehead. Doesn't that remind you of something? For many at the time, the rhinoceros was seen as the embodiment of the biblical unicorn, a symbol of untamed strength that, in some interpretations, represented both spiritual purity and divine wrath. And there's more. A persistent rumor floated through the Vatican's shadowy halls. It was said the rhinoceros horn had magical properties. That's right. It was believed to neutralize poisons, cure diseases, and, get this, even ward off demons. Can you imagine what it would mean for the Pope to possess something like that? It wouldn't just be a quirky collectible, it would be an unmatched spiritual weapon. And so, barely recovered from his first sea voyage, our poor rhinoceros was chained up once more and loaded onto another ship. As the sails caught the wind, no one could have imagined that this trip would be even more fateful than the first. The ship cut through the Mediterranean waters, carrying its unusual passenger. At the first stop, the famous island of Château d'If, near Marseille, a surreal scene unfolded. The King of France, Francis I, had demanded to see this marvel with his own eyes. "Mon Dieu!" exclaimed the French monarch, observing the creature from a safe distance. "It's even more impressive than they said." But our rhinoceros was no longer the same. Weeks at sea had taken their toll. His eyes, once lively and alert, were now dull and tired. The constant rocking of the ship made him nauseous, and the chains weighed heavier and heavier on his wild spirit. "He's not doing well," murmured one of the most seasoned sailors to the captain. "I've never seen an animal with such a defeated look." The captain knew they had to keep moving. The weather was changing, and dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. "We need to leave now, or we'll face the storm in open waters," he warned the French officials. But it was too late. The storm hit with a fury worthy of ancient maritime legends. Giant waves rose like liquid mountains, swallowing the deck over and over. The sailors, even the most experienced, clung to the masts, praying in every language they knew. In the hold, the rhinoceros felt every jolt. The ship groaned and creaked as if it would snap in two. And then it happened. A deafening crash, splintering wood, desperate screams. "Water in the hold!" The shout pierced through the stormy night. In his final moments, as the ship sank into the depths of the Mediterranean, the rhinoceros must have felt something familiar. That in that last instant, he was, for the first time since leaving his homeland, truly free from the chains that bound him to man's whims. Days later, when his massive body was found floating near the Italian coast, the local fishermen couldn't hold back their tears. There he was, the magnificent animal that nobody really wanted, who traveled thousands of miles only to meet his end in the depths of the sea. But the story wouldn't end there. Not even death could stop this rhinoceros from leaving his mark on history. The news of the shipwreck hit Portugal like a lightning bolt. King Manuel I, determined not to let his gift to the Pope literally go down the drain, made a surprising decision. "Recover the body," he ordered, "and call the best taxidermists in the kingdom." It was a race against time. The enormous rhinoceros carcass, already decomposing, was dragged onto the beach in a macabre spectacle that drew hundreds of curious onlookers. "Is it true that its tears turn into diamonds?" one villager asked. "I heard its horn can cure any disease," commented another. "Silence!" barked the head taxidermist. "We've got work to do." For weeks, the specialists worked day and night to preserve what was left of the majestic animal. The embalming process was an unprecedented challenge. After all, no one there had experience with a creature of that size. When it finally arrived at the Vatican in 1516, the embalmed rhinoceros caused an even bigger stir than it would have alive. Pope Leo VI, known for his love of art and the wonders of the world, was ecstatic. "Magnifico!" exclaimed His Holiness, organizing a proper exhibition for Europe's elite. But it was a German artist, who never saw the rhinoceros in person, that would immortalize its image in an unexpected way. Albrecht Dürer, relying solely on descriptions and second-hand sketches, created a woodcut print that would become legendary. Dürer envisioned the animal as an almost mythological creature, covered in plates that resembled natural armor, with intricate textures and fantastic details. It wasn't anatomically accurate. In fact, it was far from it, but it captured something even more important: the mystery and fascination the creature provoked. It's as if he created not just a rhinoceros, but a giant, unique rhinoceros, commented a critic of the time. The very essence of the exotic and the unknown. The woodcut spread across Europe like wildfire, being copied and recopied countless times. For centuries, this was how Europeans imagined all the rhinoceroses in the world, based on that artistic interpretation of an animal that died at sea. You know what's surprising is that while that poor rhinoceros was sinking into the Mediterranean Sea, something much bigger was being born, something no one could have predicted. Over the years following the tragedy, a fascinating phenomenon began unfolding in the halls of European nobility. The conversations, once centered around jewels and conquests, now revolved around an uncomfortable question. What did we do to that rhinoceros? A chronicler of the time, whose secret diary was discovered hidden in the walls of a monastery in 1998, wrote disturbing words. "Today I saw the Duke of Medici contemplating his collection of exotic animals. His hands trembled. Are we really that different from those who chained the rhinoceros?" he murmured to himself. The stories about the animal began to take on a life of their own. Sailors swore that on stormy nights, when the sea was at its fiercest, they could hear a different sound mixed with the thunder, something between a lament and a roar. In taverns near the Vatican, people whispered about strange occurrences. Guards reported that sometimes, in the early hours of the morning, they found enormous footprints in the papal gardens, footprints that mysteriously disappeared. "It's the curse," some would say. "It's the price we pay for our arrogance," whispered others. But the true impact went far beyond superstitions. Dürer's woodcut, with its almost mythical representation of the animal, began circulating through Europe like a virus of curiosity. Young artists and scientists, staring at that fantastic image, started asking questions they'd never considered before. "If we were so wrong about the rhinoceros," questioned a young naturalist in his 1612 manifesto, "how many other wonders of the world are we mistaken about?" A silent revolution was underway. In universities, in artists' workshops, in the labs, of the first modern scientists, the story of the rhinoceros was told and retold, not just as a simple tragedy, but as a turning point in European thinking. And then came the discoveries. In 1967, an Italian fisherman found something strange tangled in his nets, a piece of ancient chain with a unique design used only on 16th-century Portuguese ships. In 2003, archaeologists uncovered secret documents in the Vatican that suggested something even more intriguing about the final fate of the embalmed body. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare us for what was found in 2019 during a routine excavation in Florence. A discovery so extraordinary that, let me just tell it straight. The excavations in Florence in 2019 revealed something no one expected: a sealed chest containing personal letters from Pope Leo VI. In one of them, written in shaky handwriting during the final hours of his life, he confessed, "The rhinoceros taught us more in death than all the living philosophers. His involuntary sacrifice opened our eyes to our own nature." This late confession leads us to a deep reflection on how we treat what we don't understand. The rhinoceros, in his tragic journey, became an unintended mirror of our own humanity, or lack thereof. Think about it. A majestic animal, torn from his homeland, turned into political currency, and finally swallowed by the sea, all because no one was willing to take responsibility for his life. Isn't this also the story of so many other creatures and ecosystems we've destroyed in the name of progress? The discovered letters reveal even more. In his final days, the Pope ordered the creation of a code of conduct for the treatment of exotic animals in Europe, a revolutionary document for the time which was unfortunately lost during the sack of Rome, but its ideas echoed through the centuries. But here's the detail few people know. Documents discovered in 2003 in the Vatican's secret archives suggest that Pope Leo X had plans to display the rhinoceros not just as a curiosity, but as a symbol of the Church's dominance over the natural and mystical world. It was as if he was saying, "Look, even the wildest and most mysterious creatures bow to the will of God and the Pope." But as we know, fate had other plans. The shipwreck that swallowed the rhinoceros also sank those grand projects. Or did it? Some theorists claim the storm that destroyed the ship wasn't a coincidence. Some say that certain forces, maybe divine, maybe darker, didn't want that animal in the Vatican's hands. After all, if the rhinoceros really carried some mystical power, it should never have been chained and used as a piece of religious propaganda. And now I ask you, is this just another tragic story from the past? Or is there something the Vatican really doesn't want us to know? God forgive me if I'm sinning, but I'm not claiming anything. Just think about it. How many other secrets are still hidden in archives we'll never see? Personally, I think the legacy of this rhinoceros goes far beyond his tragic death or Durer's famous woodcut. He became a timeless symbol of how human vanity can have devastating consequences. And more than that, his story teaches us that sometimes we need to lose something precious to understand its true value. Today, while thousands of species remain threatened with extinction, the story of this rhinoceros resonates with a disturbing force. How many other gifts are we sacrificing on the altar of our own arrogance? As you can see, what started as a simple gift became one of the most fascinating and mysterious stories of the 16th century. But now tell me, do you think the Vatican really hid something about this rhinoceros, or is this just one of those stories that time turned into legend? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, go ahead and give it a like. Share it with that friend who loves a good historical mystery. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next sea adventures. Oh, and click the video popping up on the screen right now. If this story surprised you, the next one will leave you speechless. Big hugs, and see you in the next sea story.